Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm joined here with my co-host Frank Gao, and we have a special guest, Jeremy Bryner. Now, this episode's going to be a little bit different. Like we typically cover, the competitive shooter, the match directors, recaps of matches, stuff like this. This time, we're going in a little different direction. We're going to cover somebody who is a photographer, and for those who know me, they know I'm kind of interested in the videography, obviously the podcasting, because that's what we're doing here, and stuff like that. But I've always had an interest in photography. And one of my very good friends, Darren Morell, the owner of Red Stitch Targets, he brought me on with Jeremy Bryner. We kind of made the introduction. I introduced myself to Jeremy, and Jeremy's going to be the photographer for the Red Stitch Targets Intergalactic Falling Steel Match this coming September. That is a mouthful. But it kind of got me into an idea of, let me get into the head of a photographer and kind of see different aspects of it and how certain sports relate to others, and how we as competitors can have some kind of match etiquette for the photographer to increase awareness or just help him get better shots. That way it doesn't interrupt what he's doing, also what we're trying to do. So before I go any further, Jeremy, can you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the invite to join you guys. I've only done a couple of podcasts in the past about photography, but I met Darren actually through the racing community. So it's kind of cool with his background with military shooting, but then also motorsports community, and the fact that he already kind of knew the track that I invited him to, and had him join my team. I was the leader of this photography group that shot a national championship for a grassroots racing team or series. So that took place at Pittsburgh International Raceway. I knew a little bit of information about him through some friends, but as we started chatting, it was cool to get to know his background. But through motorsports, that's been my biggest drive for photography. I got the drive for and the bug for cars actually through my mother. I got photography from my father. Basically, as a kid, I started out on 35 millimeter film, little Pentax DSLR. Family vacations, air shows. My father was a pilot in the Air Force. So, basically the rest of the family has been related in the military. I never ended up getting in the armed services. But he was a pilot and navigator for EF-111s during Desert Storm. Stationed in England, did all the good stuff over there, met my mother in England.
That's where I met my wife.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, they married over there. They came over to the States. And it was actually through my dad's father that had actually built Kentucky rifles for 30 or 40 years. Was part of the Ohio's muzzleloading. I forget the whole organization, but essentially muzzleloading rifles, Kentucky rifles, all that kind of stuff. So I learned how to shoot with dad, mom, and my grandfather, whether it was muzzleloaders, 1911s, Winchester rifles. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And as a kid, of course, the BB gun and the 22. But really, that was most of the shooting experience was just as a kid. Did some competitive trap shooting for a period of time. But due to life in general kind of moved away from that. As time went on, I really started getting into drawing and art and stuff like that. But then I kept going back to photography, and eventually coming out of high school, went to go into college. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design for a bachelor's degree in movie visual effects. So CGI, green screen, essentially the jack of all trades. I had to do it all. So the drawing portion got into it, working with cinema cameras. But what was cool on the weekends, being down in Savannah, Georgia, is I'm close to multiple racetracks. So taking the love from cars, I spent almost every weekend I could at Roebling Road, Road Atlanta. And when I came back home, mid-Ohio during the breaks. And that's where, as a spectator, I would go in and just take as many pictures as possible. And I met so many incredible people with the motorcycle community, grassroots, sports cars, exotics, I mean, all kinds of stuff, and made some great friends that I'm still really well connected with now. Kind of getting into coming out of college is when I started making photography an actual job. Worked for car dealerships off and on. Coming out of college, didn't get anything in the film industry, just couldn't really find a fit anywhere. But I kind of backed up and said, well, hey, I'm passionate about photography. And a few years later, then I started getting a full-time job and taking pictures. So that kind of generalizes it anyways.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's so rare. Like I knew whenever I was a kid, I always wanted to be in the military. Like, and I was influenced heavily, I would say, by my uncle. Like, whenever he would come home on leave, he was in the army. He did, I want to say, 24 years in the army, and so that I kind of looked up to that, and so my mother always said, I don't care if you go in the military, but you're never going in the Marines. What do? I go to the Marines. It's just a fact of life. Your
Yeah.
parents going to tell you something, you're going to rebel against it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to do. Then I got in the Marines, here I am over 20 years later, retired, and I'm still working for the Marines. It's kind of, we do what we enjoy, and it's very, very seldom that you carry that dream forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and you're obviously very successful at what you do. You turned your passion and your hobby into your full-time professional career and got exactly into the space that you wanted to. So it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, in some ways, I wanted to, for a period of time, wanted to get into the Air Force, or, for a period, it was like I want to become a helicopter pilot and all kinds of stuff. But coming through as a teenager after 9/11 and all that stuff, and then all those guys coming out of Iraqi freedom, all that kind of stuff, as I was getting older, all of those veterans were looking for aviation jobs outside of the military as well. So, and I have poor eyesight. I'm wearing pretty strong contacts as well. So I'm like, well, poor eyesight, don't want to get LASIK. Military is kind of out. And I don't know, it never really captured my attention, but I still love aircraft.
Yeah.
The whole military aspect, the history of it, everything, just never felt the drive to get in the armed services, but I have a great respect for it.
No, yeah. And I mean, not everybody's going to. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've learned. Like, one of the weirdest things for me is whenever I got out, it was kind of like, what do I want to do with my life? I can have a whole other career outside of the military. And I tried that, and to me, it looked like a lot of people were doing things. They were just doing their regular 9 to 5. They seemed miserable, and it was just kind of like whatever. And that's how I was turning. I was like, I don't feel passionate about what I'm doing. And then an opportunity came up to where I can go work at, the basic school teaching something I did. I was like, I am very passionate about that. And it does give me a kind of drive. And that's what I'm doing now. And it's kind of giving me further direction for, continuing some type of follow on activities within that sector. So, I mean, we'll see. I got the rest of my life ahead of me to figure life out. So,
I should also
Yeah.
mention I spent almost 10 years in the Boy Scouts. So that took a lot of my time. I guess in some ways I didn't go to the military. I spent a lot of my time, effort, money and all that stuff and resources, but also again passion going into the Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout, 3 Palms. I had to get one more merit badge than Dad, but essentially my dad's an Eagle, his brother's an Eagle, both of my cousins are Eagles. At least that kind of ran in the family and wanted to continue along anyways. But that allowed me in some ways to travel abroad, kind of like the military. I did wilderness survival training, backpacking, scuba diving, skydiving. I mean, anything. I mean, basically the non-military version.
No, that's cool. I never got into that.
Well,
just-
if I could jump in, I'm
Yeah.
also an Eagle Scout.
There
I
you
think
go.
it did a lot of really. I mean, I didn't realize the similarities between the Boy Scout organization and the military until I joined. It's interesting that not everyone knows about it, but that's one way to get meritoriously promoted upon entering the armed services. Like you'll
Wow.
automatically get promoted to PFC.
Yep.
It's either that or college, right? It was actually easier to just show them my Eagle Scout card than to send them my transcript, because college transcripts are just a pain in the ass. What'd you do for your Eagle project?
I built sporting equipment for a developmental disabilities organization. So bocce ball sets, ball carts, I mean, all kinds of stuff, because they participated in the Special Olympics. So they used this equipment to practice and compete.
Okay, very cool. Mine was a shot put pit. Basically, the middle school that like hosted us, I asked them what they needed, and they're like, well, we're putting together a track team. We would love a regulation shot put pit. You still involved in the Scouts? I find that.
Unfortunately not. It's just, as I would like to get, if I get involved, I really want to get involved. And right now, where life is, just wouldn't permit me to do so. And maybe in the next couple of years, if life slows down, I'll get reintegrated back into it.
Yeah, I'm in the same position, but it's also harder when you don't have kids.
Yes.
I have a daughter, but my daughter's into art, and offline, offline after this, I would love to at some point talk to you about art and photography and more of that stuff, especially whenever it comes to developing my daughter and, pushing her toward her passion. I think that would be interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things I've always wanted to help others. I wouldn't say experience how I experienced it, but more of learn from my experiences. There's so many different paths you can go to teach yourself.
Yeah.
But it's those different little pushes of like, hey, look in these areas, ask these certain questions, or just go feet first in and just do it, because you're not going to learn unless you try.
Right. Yep. So kind of going back toward the direction of the questions, you've obviously always wanted to be a photographer, striving toward that. You didn't have a fit for anything in Hollywood, as you mentioned, but do you do videography, drone work, and stuff like that?
Well, I made my dad happy. I got my pilot's license flying a drone. Again, it was one of those other things. I always wanted to become a private pilot, but just money and resources and stuff never happened. But it's last couple of years, I'd say I'm on year 3.5, basically, of having my Part 107 drone certifications. So flying for freelance, using it for various gigs, probably the more major gig that I've been actually using the drone for. I started last year. I've got it again this year, is filming a documentary of what's called the Race Across America. So it's actually a coast-to-coast cycling race. It's been going on since the 1970s, I believe, but I was hired by a U.S.-based team with one solo rider going coast to coast. Unfortunately, due to health and crazy weather, he had a DNF in Kansas. But this year in June, I'm taking 25 days and covering both the preparation and hopefully the finish of an Australian team that's got a solo rider. So I'm flying the drone at all the way in Wolf Creek Pass in Colorado at 10,500 feet. glass elevator, I believe in California. I forget exactly on what state it's in. But I mean, I'm diving it down. I'm following stuff. I'm reading the authorizations for my airspace, all those really cool parameters and fun stuff to play with safety wise. But it's been cool to get the technicalities down, but then learn how to make an art out of it.
Right. So what was it like going out to your first race to shoot professionally? Was there someone that you looked up to that took you under their wing and helped you develop your own style?
I pretty much I'm all self-taught. Other than
Okay.
2 photography classes in college, it was all me. I think I learned a lot from watching other photographers. Whenever I had a chance and we were at, an IndyCar race to an IMSA race, or American Le Mans series, as some people may know as it used to be known as, literally watching where they were standing, what they were shooting. But at the very beginning, let's say 2010, which is when it kind of really kicked off, I had no one other than learning from myself, watching dad shoot the film camera. I was kind of the pioneer in photography for my family, and I didn't really know anyone else to really follow along or coach me. So that was trial and error, shooting millions of shots, no joke. And then during my college weekends, going out to the racetracks, shooting, editing, learning the techniques, and forcing myself to learn. But when I eventually got into the full-time professional stuff, that's when you had, you can't call them coworkers, but just fellow photographers at these same events. And they're all such an inviting community that if you got questions or like, hey, how did you get that shot? What equipment did you use? It was most of the time wide open of what do you need to know?
Mm-hmm.
But on the same thing, you still have to figure it out yourself. They can tell you all the settings you want, but until you start doing it and making it natural,
Mm-hmm.
it's still pretty difficult to do what I do now.
Well, Darren was telling me about like one of the first times he went out, and I think it was one of the first times he went out with you, and like you asked a question, he's like, "Hey man, how old are you?" Well, I'm 51. Are you okay with taking instructions from somebody much younger than you? Yeah, man, I don't care. I'm just out here to learn. Like, send me to the worst place you want. I don't care. I'll just do it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, it felt in some ways awkward for someone that I felt like is in the field longer than me, and then someone of military background have taken, basically, I wouldn't say orders, just, assignments to go out and shoot this stuff. I'm like, should I be telling him what to do, or should I just let him do whatever he wants? In some ways, he has that intimidating personality, but once you get to know him, he's like a teddy bear.
Oh yeah, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But like,
Oh,
he's like me. Like, whenever you see me like in the middle of something and like when I'm going at it, I have resting bitch face. Like, people think I'm pissed off.
Darren has a master's degree in that.
Yes, he does. and like, I when I was on the shooting team, like I'd be sitting in my office and I'm just like hammering away at stuff. And like people told me I didn't want to go talk to you because you just looked fucking pissed off all the time. I was like, dude, I was in a great mood. What are you talking about? They're like, you didn't look like it. I was like, well, now you know. I have resting bitch face all the time. But if you got a question, just come up and ask me. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer any questions too, but yeah, I've been told I look pretty serious when I'm like focused.
And I think that's an important aspect. Like when you're focused, you are full on in invested in what you're doing, and it's like sometimes kind of like with match etiquette. Like Frank and I talk about this. Like when you're getting ready to go on a stage, that's really not the time to go up and talk to somebody. Like just wait until their run is over. And then whenever they're coming off the stage and they're reloading mags, that's kind of the time to talk to them, like because they're hyper focused on what they're about to do.
That's very much in the motorsports side of things, which I can elaborate on later. But yeah, it's one of those of game face is on. When the helm is on, don't start making jokes with them unless they're messing with you.
Mm-hmm.
they've got their regiment to work with and their focus. So it's one of those things, like if a session's on track, and especially like, Darren, Tony, and my buddy Taylor were out there, we tried not to even text each other during a session unless something came up, because you got your task, you're there to focus on it. If something comes up, we'll communicate. But otherwise, I trust you to know what to do. Have at it. Do your thing.
Hell yeah. So as we discussed in your intro and throughout this, you have a very diverse portfolio. Between the race across America, the I'm drawing a blank. Car races and stuff. It's very diverse. Almost nothing that is shooting related. And Darren has brought you into his match, the Intergalactic Falling Steel Match, to shoot photos for his match. How are you going to take those skills that you've developed in other areas of your career and adapt it to your style of photography? And then what does the perfect shot look to you right now?
Having never shot match shooting before, I've been to the gun range. I know kind of the stance, the equipment, all that kind of stuff. It's still going to be a learning experience. Just like when I shot my first paid wedding. If you want to talk about diversity, I got a wedding in 2 weeks and a proposal this weekend in New York City. So it's one of those, you're always, it's kind of going back before, it's less about the technicalities now, but more about the art. So I'm not having to take the time and figure out what shutter speed do I need. What lens do I need? I already know. I can walk into a scene, know white balance, exposure settings, where do I need to stand? The only thing I'm looking for initially is visual cues. I'm watching, okay, where is this guy going? What signals he getting to start shooting? What is the pattern? And after like the first or second person, I'm already formulating a plan to either be repetitive to make sure everyone gets the very similar shots, or what are some different unique angles I can get. So whether it's the muzzle of the gun, if I got muzzle flash, my camera's quick enough I can capture that. I don't know if Darren shared the shots with you when I visited Blackhawk.
Not yet,
Blackhawk
but
or Shadowhawk? Shadowhawk. Went there. That was actually a great test of my equipment, because I'll have the exact same stuff when I show up in later this year. Is I've got the speed, not necessarily to freeze, but you can actually stop a bullet midair out of the muzzle of a gun. So I have the opportunity to catch the slide coming open, the muzzle flash going, if it's, I want to get the gun pushing forward. So again, I've got the fundamentals down, and I've watched enough shooting videos online. I know YouTube's a great resource, but until I'm there and see the tools that are being used, the flow, how are things being scored, that kind of stuff, it'll be a learning experience, but I've got a good foundation to work from.
Well, I am very interested in, and like I'm gonna be there hanging out at the match pretty much the entire weekend, between shooting, hanging with friends, and bullshitting with Darren and stuff like that. Like, if you want, I'd be more than happy to be like, hey, this is a great area for this area. This is great here. You can capture good angles for this. And also, because the shooting sports are very, very different in a sense. Like much like car racing, like at the snap of a finger, something can go extremely wrong, and it generally doesn't. But safety is to be mindful of.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, I'd love to, like, one, hang out and show you some of that stuff, but two, just kind of sit back, watch, and see how you do stuff, so I can kind of formulate my own hobby too, because I do have cameras, and I love having fun with that stuff and learning from other people.
You'll also find how I shoot is very similar to shooting firearms.
Okay.
That comes down to my hunting and shooting experience.
Follow through. Being able to just follow through with the shot.
Well, it's initial. If you want to get more detailed, initial, okay, where is the object going to show up? So anticipation, where it's going to show up, actual acquisition, tracking, and then follow through.
Oh,
And
that's
then
cool.
how do you release from the follow through? Because especially with cars, I got cars coming by between 100, 200 miles an hour. And if I have multiple cars, how do you repeat that every single time? The other part of it is assuming not just straight line speed, like drawing, it's a perfect 1-2, but also acceleration or
Hmm.
deceleration. So if I'm watching and if I'm literally trying to figure out where is this guy pushing his pistol out, I'm anticipating how far is he going to reach, and I'm moving to stop where the end of his muzzle is, because every
Okay.
person's different.
Right.
So it's learning, getting that initial forward, and especially lock focus in and don't touch focus, because the moment he pulls back, if he puts his hand back out, I still have focus. So it's kind of those little tactics of why work harder, work smarter.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I like how you kind of blend it all together. And I would love to just kind of sit back,
Mhm.
watch, and observe and learn, if you don't mind.
Sure. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. So last one I have before I hand it over to Frank is, so in race photography, it's gear intensive. Much like podcasting gear and shooting gear, we have a lot of equipment. Whenever the last match I went to, I did like a live stream and everything. I think I brought two cameras. I brought like stuff to hang cameras on. I had like two microphones, plus I had two wireless mics. Like I had as much money in podcasting camera gear that I did in shooting gear, if you can believe that, which you probably can. Um, so there's a lot of preparation to it. But you have the additional requirement of press passes, wearing vests for safety, stuff like that. What does your typical day at the track look like, and how do you plan on preparing for an event like, what you're about to do in September
Mhm.
with the Intergalactic Falling Steel match?
Yeah. So starting off with gear, I always say I don't do anything at track days. I don't participate in them because I'm literally wearing the car. I'm not joking. Uh, just like you, it's when I'm taking my bag on airplanes and stuff, I always carry it on with me because it's the value of a car. My
Hmm.
career in a bag, that's why I have some serious insurance, because if it ever goes walking off, I got to replace it. But it's over the years of building the skills. I always try to get gigs to pay for equipment, and it's as the gigs got higher end and the client's quality demand got higher and higher, I had to upgrade the equipment to get either give me the capabilities or give me the quality that that they would expect from me and more. So I'm shooting with two different cameras right now. I've got all Nikon equipment, by the way.
Okay.
I've got a Nikon Z9 mirrorless. So
Okay.
that's their mirrorless flagship,
Yep.
pro body. Shoots 8K 60, 4K 120, all kinds of stuff. They can shoot 120 frames a second in photo JPEG.
Oh, wow.
Crazy capabilities. That's the camera that I'll use to really get those more gun high speed stuff.
Hmm.
It can operate just like a normal camera, the mirrored stuff anyways. It's amazing what it can do. It's a full hybrid. The other camera is a D6, which is the mirror type, old school if you want to call it, but it's
Yep.
very much extremely high tech. And both of these cameras, Nikon essentially develops them for the Olympics. So if you can imagine the crazy high speed or even slow speed shots at the Olympics, that's what these cameras can do. I just recently, this past winter, picked up a 500 millimeter f4.
Oh, wow.
So that's like the go-to from what I've seen. If you average out all the different lenses being used at racing,
Hmm.
500 is a really good choice. It's enough that
Yep.
it shows the environment, but it can be very tight. That retail brand new goes for 10.5.
I know Darren has his Canon, which is a 500 mil. I think he has a 600 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when he told me the price, I was just like, fucking hell, man. Like, you just
Yeah.
gasp. You're
Yeah.
like, all
The
right.
Z9 was like 5,600. The D6 was 6,700. The 500 F4 is, I got it for a killer deal at $4,500 just
Mhm.
because it was used, but I think a dentist didn't use it for maybe 3 times. And I mean, it's like the wide angle lenses, the prime lenses is if we want the more beauty shots,
Right.
subject isolation or low light. So if you're shooting, near dawn and sunset, that's the kind of lenses you want to play with. I also got a DJI RS3 Pro gimbal,
Oh yeah.
so I'll be shooting primarily video there at the match.
Mhm.
But I also shoot a couple photos here and there. If I wouldn't say get bored, but get enough video content that, all right, let's play with the other side of things. Cause I use both cameras with both all the other lenses and stuff. So photo and video, I can interchange back and forth pretty easily.
And see, that's where I want to really pick your brain now that I know you want to do a lot more video. Because like with where I work, I do a lot of stuff with indirect fire, mortars, artillery, stuff like that. And that's, I mean, it's all the positions are static, but it's really interesting. Like if you can capture, it's almost like taking B-roll, like just watching what the guys are doing on the gun, and then like capturing like what I really want to see is like capturing the effect, like catching a mortar round coming out of the tube, catching an artillery round coming out of the
Funny.
tube. It's not that hard of a shot coming right out of the muzzle, but being able to like just, to have that follow through to kind of track it in a sense would be interesting, and then capturing the effects of whenever it hits on the ground, that would be interesting, like almost as if you can, you know pinpoint when it's going to hit that ground. And it's easy because like in mortars we have a thing called a tabulated firing table, so
Hmm.
based on what charge, what round and what elevation that they're shooting, I could tell just based off looking at the tabulated firing tables, hey, that round is going to hit in 46 seconds, so I can be ready right before, the impact. Stuff
Now,
like
how
that.
accurate are mortars? I've never been
They
close to one.
they are they are very accurate. I ran a 81 millimeter mortar platoon, well, section, back in 2014 and 2000, early
So that's pretty
2015.
good size.
Yes. It puts a nice big boom. Uh, I want to say the casualty radius is 35 meters.
Oof.
And you're
Um,
you're firing a few of them in a line as well.
yeah, you're shooting 4 tubes.
Okay.
Typically, you're doing 3 rounds per tube when you're getting a full fire for effect,
Gotcha.
and
Now, do
they're
those have a
accurate.
pretty big muzzle flash at night? Because that's one thing you really don't see. Really, firearms, mortars, cannons. I mean, tanks, anything that's artillery or concussive based. You don't see much of those at night. I mean, obviously, night you're not going to see the actual action of it loading unless
Hmm.
you had infrared. But
Right.
do those have a loud and very large report?
I wouldn't say so, because like, so when the round strikes, whenever it's coming out of the tube,
Mhm.
I can't remember the exact length of the tube, but the firing pin is hitting the bottom of the mortar round at the very bottom of the tube. So it's just those gases pushing everything
Oh,
out of
okay.
the tube.
So it's not
So
like a
you
black
do.
powder cannon.
Mm-mm. You are getting some of that fireball effect, but it's not anything crazy massive.
Gotcha. So kind of getting back in line, that's the gear. It's lenses, but then the rain covers, the rain jackets. I use a lot of my hiking gear, being comfortable out in the field, footwear. I mean, all the little specialty stuff that I could spend a full day showing all the bits of equipment that I've learned that work for me. Um, and then that can, I mean, all of us at the photo team back last September, Darren, Tony, and Taylor, shot in full rain thunderstorms, and yet we were still able to capture cars on track. And in fact, we sometimes like shooting in the rain
Mhm.
because it gives us the spray, the water coming off the road or the track surface, reflections, all kinds of stuff. So if you can dress, be comfortable, and protect your gear, it just opens up more opportunities.
It's called being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah, you don't like getting wet, but at least you're not getting soaked, and your camera equipment is still pretty good.
Mhm.
But in terms of safety and stuff, you mentioned press pass, and that's one of the biggest things in order to get the kind of shots we do. Is depending on the track you're going to, tracks handle it in different ways. You can call ahead, your email, there's a survey or a direct email, whoever's running the track. But with a media pass, essentially you have unrestricted access to, again, depending on the track. Pit race has been really, it's a tough track to shoot because you actually have to coordinate, get in a vehicle, drive to the section, either drive off on an access road or actually hop over the fence. But if you're mid-Ohio, you can literally just hop over a fence at an access point where the corner worker is, and then all you have between you is either a cut open hole in a chain link fence or like a K barrier, like the metal rails alongside the highway. We're standing behind there, full wide open view. So
Has there been any times where you've had an oh shit moment and like, is this gonna go good or bad for me?
for me, thankfully, it was on the side of it. We had a car empty its whole entire contents of oil on the track, turn 9, mid Ohio, and I
Mhm.
witnessed about almost a dozen and a half cars slide off all at the same time. And that was I know I'm not supposed to be a safety person and hop over and help, but this was like one after another, after another, after another. And when
Mass
everything
casualty
stopped,
event.
it was almost like, all right, do I need to do triage? The whole first aid Eagle Scout thing kicked in, and I'm like, you know what? They're going to red flag everything. Do I need to go out there and help? But Darren can give you a great story on the oh shit moment at that championship race. I think it was the Storm group during at pit races. He happened to be at a spot that looked straight down from where they did the green flag, and the race group all tight. He moved down to a little portion just off of, if you were straight line with the track, and these cars got tangled up, and he has the full sequence of photos of those cars literally getting tangled, sliding through the wet grass so they don't slow down, full energy at over 100 miles an hour, hitting the K barrier and flipping over top, and the whole barrier moved back almost 10 feet. It sheared off the actual pylons. Darren
Damn.
was out there at one point and thankfully moved.
Hmm.
So what we're doing can be pretty dangerous, and we realize that we have less distance to be able to get out of the way. Situational awareness is absolutely key, because even if a single car slides and hits the barrier, it can bend it back 3 feet. Well, that's a car hitting you still. I've had melted rubber coming off of tires and slinging it at high speed through a chain link fence and hit one of my eyes when I was down in New Orleans at the track down there. So that's why I try to wear sunglasses as much as possible. So it can be pretty dangerous. That's why they don't let everybody in a camera go hop down and get these shots. And we're pretty protective when it comes to photographers not being experienced shooting around track, or someone that thinks they're media without a media vest. We can get them banned from a track because they don't know the dangers involved.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, that's a really interesting insight into, some of the moments that perhaps, not everything, most of the time things go okay, but there are those instances.
Yeah.
I am taking a look at some of the photos that you've uploaded onto your Instagram under DownForce Media. And I think some of my favorite shots are the ones where you're able to basically capture the personality or the individuality of the racer behind the helmet. And I think you were also able to do that in some of the shots in which you captured people shooting. Is that something that is actively in the back of your mind that you try to get whenever you're shooting these races? Because I mean, just the photos of cars can be incredibly impersonal.
Yeah, it's funny. You'll see some of the cars. They kind of have a character themselves. If
Yes.
they're driving loose, especially when you're there, it's one of those cool things. As a photographer, you're experiencing the car as well. If it's 1,000 horsepower crazy turbo car, you're trying to show that incredible amount of horsepower energy coming through and that the serious speed they're doing. But that was one of the things that I first didn't really get. I was an extreme introvert. I didn't like being around people when I first started shooting racing. So it was when I first got into pro racing, shooting IMSA, I was assigned to shoot pit lane. Or, hey, you're going to go work with Lexus. We need to go get some helmet on shots. Those guys are getting ready. Or, hey, this Porsche team, they're all clients. Get the helmet on. Well, I don't want to just stand back and necessarily always get them from really far. But if you can get them sometimes sitting on the concrete barrier and literally just watch them visor open, just eyes are closed like they're sleeping, but then you can see them lean and actually practice the turns of the track. They're actually visualizing it in their head, which I'm sure shooters do the same, as they can sit there, 1, 2, pull back, 3, mag change, and then they're pre-visualizing it. You also get drivers have all their different personalities. You get their very strict, they're all about the race. They're always about getting first, the very structured guys.
Mhm.
But then you get the ones that intentionally mess with you. You'll be sitting at pit lane, they're standing on top of the wall, and they know you're standing there ready for the shot. They'll pull their head out, they'll look straight into the camera and just give this wide-eyed look, just messing with you.
So I know what to do now.
Yeah. So it was learning the characters, and when I did the whole season of IMSA there, it was when the crew members started knowing me.
Mhm.
I wasn't just a random photographer like, whoa, I don't know you. They finally let me in their personal space. And that's what I really love when it comes to weddings, eventually the shooting competition. Once people understand what I'm trying to do and they're comfortable with me, I don't need to be like 2 inches from their eyeball. But in some ways, I kind of want to get that shot of using a 70-200, focusing off the reflection of their sunglasses, looking down the sights of their gun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's those unique angles. Well, I can't do that from 10, 15 feet away.
Right.
So in some ways, you can capture the seriousness of the situation. You can get some fun stuff of guys talking and collaborating. That whole community aspect. So groups of guys, if there's the initial introduction, drivers meeting is what I'm used to. And then just candid, fun moments that just kind of happen. And I've been really good about capturing those memorable moments. Everyone, I can get cars on track easy. But what do you get that someone, if it's their best friend or someone that they really admire came in for a fist bump through the driver's side window? You capture that moment and they're like, I don't care about the rest of the weekend. That was a cool moment. I want to remember that. And those are like, I just want that one shot. Can you just give that to me?
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at a lot of beautiful photos of cars and also nature, but also some really great human moments. So that's definitely something I want. It seems like that's something you kind of have to hunt for and be attentive towards. So
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's taken time. It's that if you want to call it the eye to develop, but it's once you learn the series, the flow, it was a totally different world going from road racing to NHRA Top Fuel.
Mhm.
In just the weekend of shooting that, where do they stage up the driver introductions to the drivers don't hang around the cars very often. They're in their massively heavy suit. Well, I've just by observation and, the clients I wasn't shooting, I'd watch them and just sit back, just observation, just kind of like, so that's how it works. All right, well, I need to apply what I'm seeing here to the guy I'm actually working with. You know, it's a really cool game of observation, adapting, and applying, and experimentation. Sometimes it may not work, or all right, I'll get that the next time they go out. So that can still apply to the shooting competition. You know, when if they have a special ritual before they go up to the stand, before they, you know, put the magazine in, how does he reach down to the belt? Is he pulling it with 2 fingers, a whole hand? If it's a female shooter, what if she's got some really cool fingernail polish on that looks like a really cool shot, reaching down to pulling a specialty 1911 out of a holster? Just cool little things like that, the detail shots.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what you come up with, not only from the events that you've already done, but the shooting, the falling steel match as well. Now that you're branching into the shooting sports, how do you see your business evolving beyond what you already do?
I like the motorsports stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm always looking for something different. Getting to the NHRA stuff was really cool. Essentially anything I can put my camera in front just to experience something different, because a 500 millimeter lens with a teleconverter at 700 millimeters of focal length can reveal some really cool stuff. So in some ways, it's like taking a telescope to a basketball game. You know, you see some really interesting details happening. I've always had a love for shooting sports, the competitive trap shooting. I did competitive archery for like a year or 2 years, and then kind of fell out of it. But I miss it. I really, after hanging out with Darren and Chuck at Shadowhawk, I'm like, when can we do this again? Because it isn't just amateurish, or the boys going out to the gun range just to plink, plink, plink. Okay, we're done. That level of professionalism, the tools that are involved in it, frickin' 50 caliber PMG. How can you not want more of that? But I've always wanted to watch competitive shooting in person, see it being done, and it would be cool to both, shoot more, but also maybe participate myself. Because again, I'm observing, I'm seeing the tricks of the trade, how people are doing technique, and maybe things will, distribute less on the motorsports side of things and moving more towards the shooting stuff. Who knows? But with having a kind of a history in both, I feel like I can kind of go between the two.
Yeah, definitely. We've interviewed people who, are into the shooting sports and also photography. So yeah, I'm sure it'll come very naturally, and you've shot other disciplines as well. Matt and I have traveled all around the country, and you've done a lot of traveling as well for different events. So what are some of like the favorite places that you've been to, the events that you've worked, and locations in general?
Let's just say I've been everywhere. I've had a really great privilege of having amazing parents that took me all over the place. So you can say I'm well traveled, even for being 32. Been to Australia. I shot film pictures there with that little film Pentax camera. Went to Peru to film a motorcycle TV show. So Machu Picchu, Cusco, the deep back country, which also includes the highest altitude I've ever been at 15,500 feet, and I'm filming video. And all over the United States. I mean, in terms of motorsports, I would say my favorite tracks is like Road Atlanta, Virginia International Raceway. If you want to go out west, Sonoma Raceway and Laguna Seca are fantastic places. Someone's like, what's your favorite track? I don't have one, because each and every place is such a unique feature, unique look. But if I had to keep going back to one to shoot, both Road Atlanta and Watkins Glen are absolutely fantastic motorsport tracks to photo. Not just for a professional, but if you go as even a spectator, you can get some amazing shots. They're wide open air, there's color, there's elevation, there's advertisement banners in the background. It just lends itself to a very creative environment for all those places. But then you can go to some tracks and you think it'd be really good, like Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Mhm.
It's all gray. So how do you get good shots? And that's where the whole adapt to play kind of thing comes in. So how do you work with something that's void of color while you play with the light? So those are the little tricks and things. So I can go on and on. But I've traveled to all corners. I filmed video in Dead Horse, Alaska to film another documentary. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So I could go all back to those places. There really isn't a top favorite.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that sounds quite the blessing to be able to travel to as many places as you do and to do it as part of your job. You already talked a little bit about your desire to enter the shooting sports and dabble a little bit, and so I won't ask that question, but I do have something else I want to ask, just in terms of, somebody who is constantly trying to capture the identity and the aesthetics of different objects. Do you have like a goat in terms of a car that you find most aesthetically pleasing? And then we'll also go with a gun, can be a rifle or a pistol, that you think just like that's it. That's the top. That's the top of the pyramid.
Oh, car. I would say, and it was actually a photo shoot I did that I'll never forget. I had the opportunity to photograph a Pagani Zonda R. It's a 6 point. And last time I looked at the auction values, it may be upwards of a $7 million full carbon fiber Italian hypercar. That's track only. It's not street legal. I had the opportunity in Chicago to go to a racing shop. They're like, I was already over there for a racing event. And they're like, well, come on over, come get some photos. We'll just let you do your thing. I show up and they're like, it's 1 o'clock now. We need to close the door at 5. What do we need to move in the shop to let you do your thing? So I had like 4 hours with this car, and every single angle is just beautiful. It's an Italian piece of art, is what they consider those cars.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking at it too.
wow.
And you can see the photos there on the Instagram account, but it's just magnesium wheels, the raw carbon, all the carbon is perfectly spaced and symmetrical throughout everything. The interior with the CNC machined magnesium, aluminum, all that stuff. It's like you can't get a bad angle of it. And it's like the Batmobile of track cars. Unfortunately, they didn't fire it up for me. But it's a straight piped V12. It screams. So it's a extremely unique car in terms of its performance, but also its aesthetics. In terms of a gun, though, that's a good question. After Darren and Chuck let me shoot the Desert Tech stuff, those were pretty.
I'm gonna bring a shotgun for you to check out, and maybe we can like go on a range. I'll let you shoot it and maybe get some photos of it. It's a Dissident Arms KL12 shotgun, so it's built off of a AK platform. So it's a box fed shotgun. Its magazine, the magazines I have 21 rounds in the magazine. It's a Vepr. It is, and what Dissident Arms does with it, it's like a work of art. Like I would love to shoot that shotgun in this Falling Steel match, just because it would be just so fun, like just maneuvering around the stage with the shotgun. Like I shoot it in 3-gun all the time, shooting open. Well, I've shot it twice, maybe 3 times in a match so far. I just switched to like in the shooting sports, you have different divisions that you shoot in. Like at this match, you have optics, irons, and PCC. In 3-gun, you have open division, which is like whatever attachments and whatever gear you want to run. If you want to run bipods, if you want to run with a tripod, however many optics on your gun, like like it's the full-on race division of 3-gun. And then in like, your pistols have a muzzle brake on it to help, prevent that muzzle rise and reduce that recoil. That way your optic just stays right there on target. Then you have your tactical optics division, which is just iron sights, tube fed
Okay.
shotguns, and then you have an optic on your rifle, no bipods, no nothing like that.
I'm seeing huge similarities with sports car racing because they go
Mhm.
from stock, then a modified, highly modified, and then just unlimited. Just that's the rich guy class.
Yeah. Wouldn't consider myself rich, but um but it's like I the reason why I switched to open is because it's like, well, I shot tac ops because I was in the military, and both divisions take a lot of skill to do it. But that was most similar to the type of requirements that we would go into combat with.
Mhm.
So for me to train other people and to educate them on how to shoot the way we shoot in the shooting sports in order to prepare for combat, I'm going to use the gear that's most similar whenever I compete. Now that I'm shooting it open, there's a lot of little nuances I'm learning in order to get that much faster. And, it's not just all the gear, it's getting really good with the gear and understanding how all that gear can help you in order to make your stage, make your shooting that much better. Like
Yep.
Jason Byerly, a good friend of mine, he kind of describes whenever he designs a stage as a dance. There's a certain flow to it. And in order to achieve that certain flow, you need to understand how you are going to be able to operate throughout that stage best.
Mhm. Yeah, it was interesting to see trap shooting a little different from the range competition stuff, but you would see uh, all the different lengths that guys would go to make their essential workflow work for them. Whether it was blinders on their shooting glasses to special magnifiers in a certain spot. Uh, Recoil dampeners and that I swear look like robot legs built into the stock of the guns to soften the blow, different optics, I mean all kinds of stuff. But from running very basic stuff like me in the junior leagues all the way up to these probably $50,000-$60,000, if not $100,000 Perazis
Mm-hmm.
that like, is this diminishing returns or is they truly helping that person out? I mean, obviously it's a different kind of shooting and you don't have scopes on a shotgun, but again, it's what makes you perform best. And if these guys have been doing it for 20 years and they're able to knock out perfect scores all the time, then it's definitely working for them.
I would say a lot of it's skill. I mean, I don't know much about trap or skeet shooting.
Mhm.
I suck at it, so I never bothered getting into it. I just can't lead a target to save my life, and I just haven't really taken the time to
Mhm.
get good at it. But I have a few friends in the Olympic shooting sports, and um, one of them, Keith Sanderson, he does 25 meter rapid fire pistol, which you're aiming at like a dime sized target at 25 meters. And I want to see you have like four of them out there in front of you. And you have like those pistols, they have all the bells and whistles. Um, and you're just going like that gun is there to assist you, but it's all you.
Mhm.
The gun is a support item, but it's gotta have a certain level of accuracy in order to achieve it.
Yeah. See, maybe that's one thing I need to get into is do shooting sports, and then maybe that's my inroads to shooting the Olympics. Because I always wanted to shoot the Olympics in one form or the another. Originally, it was like track and field stuff, and then it turned into the winter sports because I started getting cross country skiing and stuff like that. Well, cross country ski and pistol shooting, you got your biathlon.
Let me after this, let's have a conversation. Maybe I can put you in contact with some people.
Even if it's getting them practicing again, just um, I did a hiking trip out in the Adirondacks, out in New York, and we ran into some of the training facilities there. So I actually got to see them during the summer practicing cross-country skis on roller skates and actually shooting at their range. I'd never seen that in person. It was so cool to watch them, but it's like we couldn't hang around because it was like a sheltered facility. But that would be really cool to see, like the best of the best stuff you've only seen on TV, that you'd never think you'd see in person. So that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. We'll talk after this, and I'll see what I see where I can point you toward.
Cool. It's that evolution question.
Yeah, while you guys were talking, I've been on this Pagani website the whole time, and I don't think I can afford to be on this website.
You probably couldn't even afford a toolkit that goes with those things. I mean, it's like a $70,000 gold-plated specific toolkit just to change the tires.
Never
it's
mind
just
that.
insane.
If I put on a T-shirt with the brand on it, then it'd probably tank my credit score. So let's not go there.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, we appreciate you coming on here and talking about photography. You know, capturing the person behind the gun. I think is really interesting. Really excited to see some of the work that you're going to put out. At this point, is there anything that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
More than anything with photography, I find too many people become, in some ways, overcritical of their work or not critiquing enough. They get frustrated. They get burnt out. You got to be your own worst critic. You know, don't be afraid to actually sit down and be like, okay, I did terrible that set. Learn from it. Figure out why you went wrong. How can you fix it? If you don't know, don't be afraid to ask. So many times I've seen friends or friends of friends, or even friends of family members, you know, variety of people, or even friends, you know, they're like, oh, I had this camera, I did it for a year or two, then it just wasn't for me. I'm like, well, what was happening? And now couldn't figure out the camera. Well, I understand not everyone's going to be able to pick it up, but again, don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions, because that was the hardest part for me. Was, you know, I didn't know what lenses to use. I didn't know the right editing techniques. How do you figure out white balance? Or how do you know where to go during a racing event to get that particular shot? I'd rather have someone sit down with me for half a day and just start spouting questions so I can walk you through it and learn from my experience than struggling from it, getting burned out, and never doing it again.
I think that's something that you can take not just in photography, but
in a lot of things.
In a lot of things, specifically in the shooting sports. Like, if there's something you don't know, we're like, much like you described the photography industry, it's the same thing in the shooting community. We're there to help people.
Yeah.
And I think at times, you know, in some sectors of the the 2A community, some people are just overly critical, like, oh, what do you know? And it turns into machismo.
Yes. You will get those kind of photographers. I mean, they're the elites, essentially. Yeah. But then you occasionally get those elites that are willing to step off the Apple box and lend a hand. And those are the guys that, for me, ought to be really quick, would be like Larry Chen or a Mike Levitt, or, you know, if you know who I'm talking about. Those are the guys that you just look up to the whole time of the work they're getting. Jamie Price, various people. But then when you meet them in person and you ask those questions, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, here's what I'm doing, or just a basic, like, one sentence answer, and you're like, oh, my God, that's what I've been missing this whole entire time. I'm going to try that at the next event I go to. You know, it's that willingness to experiment. Yes, you're going to fail. There are times where, like, ooh, all right, I did not do very good there, or I really suffered in this area. Let's go out on a weekend, practice with some friends, and try this out. You know, and that's where I got the millions of shots that I've taken, you know.
Yeah, incredibly well said. I thought this was a really great look into your world and the things that you do and the type of attention to detail and also all the places you've traveled. Really neat interview. If you have questions for Jeremy, we're going to drop his Instagram handle, DownForce Media, in the show notes. And yeah, look out for some really killer photography coming out from the was it the Intergalactic Falling Steel Match. It's going to be at the end of September. We will link that as well. It's being hosted by Red Stitch Targets. It's going to be happening at Shadowhawk, which is a tremendous range. It's where Delmarva was held. And yeah, I mean, a lot of great content coming down. Let us know how we're doing, and we'll see you on the next one.
I'm looking forward to it.